This podcast is a proud member of the Fan Hub 100. Football without fans is nothing, so we've partnered with Fan Hub to put fans first. Search Fan Hub app to play your part in the journey.
Welcome back to another Mackem in the Middle podcast and another special episode for the channel. Joining me today is a man who made appearances for Palace, Fulham, Portsmouth and Manchester City and went on to manage Fulham. Former Sunderland assistant manager Kit Symons is with me now. How are you getting on, mate? You doing well?
All right, Josh. Not bad, thanks, pal. Yeah, all good.
Very good. And I look forward to the day that this question no longer applies. But lockdown, how are you finding it?
Yeah, listen, it's not great, is it? So I think we're all looking forward to getting out of it, but you know, I can't have too many complaints personally, so not too bad. But I will be glad we'll meet up with people and have a couple of beers in a beer garden. Mates will be very nice, but no, overall can't complain.
Yeah. Is there anything in the last, I suppose it's been 12 months, 13 months? I've lost track of how long it's actually been now, but is there anything that you've come across that you've started doing that you probably wouldn't have found otherwise?
We started like a little thing. So my mum's on her own up in Cardiff, and so we've ended up, we do the crossword with my mum every day. So we phone her up and do the crossword with her, and that's become like a regular thing now. And I look forward to it. My mum looks forward to it, and so that's probably been the one main thing really. And it's quite nice to do. My mum enjoys it, and it keeps sort of grey matter ticking over, and it doesn't do me any harm either.
Yeah, you still keep an eye on all the football. Been watching I watch the Premier League, but I don't think I like it much anymore with all the VR handball.
Yeah, no, it's strange times, isn't it, for everything. I mean, football's no different to that, you know. It's a bit weird. I've been watching a fair bit of football at sort of different levels. I've actually just started doing a little bit of work for the Premier League. I've only done one game so far. That will be going along to games and looking at some of the refereeing, and hopefully with a view to improving the levels there.
Yeah. Do you ever think that the referees should be doing? Obviously, you watch the games on TV, but a lot of the decisions people talk about on Twitter, I think there's a few that VAR have came out and said that were the wrong decisions. Does it annoy you watching the games when, you watch one thing, you think, oh, that's handball, that's not handball, and then they end up going and give it anyway? Yeah,
it does. It's really frustrating. But I mean, the only thing I will say is I sort of can see both sides of it. I mean, just like in training, when I'm refereeing games in training, be it with Sunderland or when I was with Wales or whatever. And it's flipping hard work, and the boys moan about every single decision, and it's a really tough job. So it's easy for people sitting back, watching numerous replays to say, well, he's made the wrong decision. And yeah, it is when you see all that footage. But I think it's a really, really difficult job, and I've always had sort of empathy towards referees, really, because I know what it's like, and it's really. It's one of those jobs where you're just going to get battered, basically, no matter what. And, the game needs them. We do need referees in the game. So I sort of feel for them a little bit. But the one thing that I think everyone's really annoyed about, and I'm the same, really, is when, they look at the VAR numerous times and then still make what pretty much everyone thinks is the wrong decision, having had that access to the VAR and all the different angles and stuff like that. So that's the one thing, or the biggest thing for me that needs to improve.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the rules as well, though, isn't it? Because obviously, the offside rule is very straightforward. You're either offside or not. But with VAR, they're now drawing the lines, and I think Werner was offside the other day, whereas T-shirt line was offside. But then the handball was given for the same part of his body. you think it's the rules that need to change more so than anything else?
Yeah, I think that would certainly help. I mean, I've always been a big fan of the one that Arsene Wenger's putting forward, whereby there needs to be daylight between the second defender and the attacking player for it to be offside. So any part of the body's level or in line at all, then onside still. So I think actually seeing daylight, I think that takes away. Well, it leads to more goals certainly, which most people would like. I mean, I'm speaking as an ex-centre half, so I moan about every offside decision going when I was playing, but now I think it would lead to more goals certainly, and it takes away any sort of grey area about whether it was an area of the body that they could score with or whatever. I think there needs to be daylight. If there's daylight, if there's not daylight, then they're not offside.
Yeah. Well, obviously, your last job in football as a coach, as manager, was, of course, in China, Chris. How did you find that? Because obviously you've spent a long time in England. It must have been a big difference.
Yeah, it was completely. I mean, just culturally, the actual football and everything as well. It was, very different to say the least. But it was a brilliant experience. We really enjoyed the whole experience. Where the club was based, the training base, and that was in Beijing, which just, I mean, the vastness and the size of that city is just incredible. But it was a brilliant experience for us. So it's something we enjoyed doing. It was something very different. We're all, like me and Chris, as you know, having come to Sunderland, we like a challenge, and we're understanding again what we were going into, as was the case with the Sunderland job. We knew it wasn't going to be all plain sailing, and there'd be issues and problems, but we don't mind that. We're not afraid to sort of roll our sleeves up and get stuck in and face a challenge.
Yeah. Was the language barrier ever an issue during your time in China? Because it was obviously I think during that time there was a lot of international players actually moving to Chinese league, wasn't there? Because I think Mascherano was at the same club at one time. Yeah,
no, we had Masha was with us, and Lavezzi, Gervinho was there when we first got there. So the language wasn't a problem really. I mean, that was probably our biggest concern going into it, but it wasn't a problem at all. I mean, the problem came. So the translator, our guy that we had with us all the time, was brilliant. He was absolutely fantastic. He'd done a football scholarship in the States, so his English was perfect. But he got football as well. He understood it. So the translating from Chris from his Swansea dialect into Mandarin was quite easy. That was all right. But the problem, the most difficult thing that we took a bit of getting used to was like in meetings. So Chris would say something, and then the translator, would translate it into Chinese. But then there would be the Spanish translators and the French translators doing it for the foreign boys. So that was the most off-putting bit, really.
Yeah.
You getting used to that, but it wasn't a real problem. Once we got our heads around that, it was okay. I mean, also football is pretty universal. If you shout in an angry voice and wave your arms around, players generally get you're not happy, and if you sort of give them a thumbs up, they get they're doing something well. So it's not that complicated as such in the basics of it. But obviously, to get some of the finer detail over, you need to speak the language or have someone doing that for you. But all our presentations, we'd do them in English when we were doing PowerPoints and stuff. We'd do them in English, but we'd also get a split screen, and it was translated into Chinese as well.
Yeah.
So we were conscious doing that, and that certainly was very, very much appreciated by the Chinese players and the Chinese staff, for that matter.
Yeah. Well, moving on to your time at Sunderland, you and Chris obviously joined the club in December of 2017. How did the move all come around? When did you first find out about?
Yeah, it's all really fast. We just literally finished doing a couple of international games for Wales.
Yeah.
Just literally finished doing them. I think we had France away was our last game, and then Chris just said to me, "Listen, this one's come up. I really fancy it," because he knew that obviously I would go with him. I mean, things like I say, we sort of decided it was time to leave Wales for a few different reasons. So yeah, the Sunderland job just came up, and Chris spoke to Martin Bain and really fancied the opportunity. We realised what had happened at the club over previous years, and we knew a lot of the problems that were happening at the club at that time. But we just felt it was a brilliant opportunity. Obviously, a brilliant football club, which was sort of that convinced us of it even more once we joined.
Yeah.
We just viewed it as an opportunity. We thought we knew it was going to be tough, but we honestly felt with a little bit of help we'd have just enough to keep the club in the Championship. But as we all know, it didn't quite go to plan.
Yeah. Obviously, Ellis Short was the owner at the time, and I know a lot of managers, ex-managers, say that they never even spoke to him or saw him during their time at the club. And as a fan, I don't think you particularly backed the managers he appointed. But what was the experience like working with Ellis?
Well, there wasn't one. So we had like zero contact. So there wasn't an email or a text or anything. There's literally zero contact with him in our whole time at the club. So Chris never once had a conversation or, like I say, even received any sort of message at all. So I think by that stage, he'd made the decision. He wanted out of the club. And I think maybe he'd had different relationships previously, and that had maybe bitten him on the arse a little bit, so to speak. And he decided that was it now, as far as with his managers and staff were concerned. He didn't want to have any contact, and that's the way he ran it. So our only sort of contact was on a day-to-day basis with Martin Bain.
Yeah. Obviously, the first game was away to Aston Villa. We lost 2-1, and I think it was Lewis Graben who got the goal, if I do remember correctly. Was that the first real sense you and Chris got about how difficult the job actually was in that situation?
No, not really. Because I came up for the Millwall game on the weekend. Chris didn't then come up until the following day when all the contracts were signed. But I came up to watch the Millwall game, and I don't know if you remember that. That was a 2-2.
Yeah.
And it was basically 4 horrific goalkeeping errors.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
4 goals. Johnny Williams dislocates his shoulder. Duncan Watmore does his cruciate. So I'm on the phone to Chris at the end of the game, something like, mate, you might want to cancel your tomorrow, because it was like, there wasn't a lot more could go wrong on that day. But like I say, I just, I came up and watched, and you could sense just within the stadium, obviously, the fans weren't happy because of what had gone on for a long period of time. And so from that day, from that moment, I got a sense, and I explained, then I got it over to Chris, like in a phone call, just what the sort of task was that we were taking on. But we were happy to do it. Like I said at the start, we both of us sort of don't mind a challenge, don't mind a bit of a scrap, and we'll roll our sleeves up and get stuck in. And so we knew it was going to be a big task, but we were willing to take it on.
Yeah. What did you make of the squad when you first walked in? Because obviously on paper there was some good players there. Obviously Aidan Mcgee, who's still at the club now, still doing what Aidan Mcgee's always done. Lewis Graben was at the club, albeit I think he left a couple of weeks later, didn't he? To go back to Aston Villa and then went back out on loan. Obviously Johnny Williams was at the club. His injury situation kind of kept him in and out of games. There was a lot of good players on paper that just didn't really seem to gel.
No, it was like, and it seemed straight away, it's really apparent, it was like a mishmash of a squad. So it was, like you say, there was a lot of talent there, a lot of ability, but it was just sort of thrown together. It wasn't, generally you look at it like an assembled squad that for playing a certain style or a certain way. I mean, what we had at the club, there were a lot of good players who were still on the payroll as well, who were out on loan at other clubs and things like that. And it was a real sort of mishmash of players, and it was a strange sort of dressing room in that respect. There are a lot of good lads in there, a lot of good lads, and a lot of good players. Like I say, a lot of talent, but just it wasn't an assembled squad. It felt like it was just a group of people thrown together.
Yeah. Well, as I say, the Villa game was the first game. I think afterwards we were bottom. I'm not sure where we were before the game. I think we were still bottom. Obviously, 4 points from safety. What was the atmosphere like around the players behind the scenes? Because I always remember, especially under Simon Grayson, The players looked defeated as soon as they came out the tunnel, especially at the Stadium of Light. Obviously, we had that horrid record at the Stadium of Light that, anyone turning up would really think, well, can we end this? We never did. Obviously, we did eventually under Chris, but what was the dressing room like?
Well, it was funny because on a daily basis, training, obviously, a fantastic training grounds, a really good environment. Training, the tempo of the training, the quality of a lot of the training was really, really good, and the general mood around the training ground was pretty good, considering, like you said, all the stuff that had gone on previously. And you got to remember these players as well. So the fans were disgruntled and fed up with what was going on, but a lot of this playing squad had a lot of knocks over a long period of time as well. So their sort of confidence was very fragile, if you like, as well. But the day to day was really good and really positive. But it was noticeable then, come a match day, when it really started to matter. Obviously, there were a lot of nerves came in and apprehension and a lot of worries with people, and it was noticeable. It was really, really clear. And like I say, that was everyone connected with the club because of what had gone on for so long. You could sense it at the stadium. The away fans were incredible. It was two completely different sort of things. And all these away fans, they're at the home games as well. But I think just with the stadium, there was this cloud hanging over it at that time. And again, like I say, I completely understand it. I've been I've played football. I've been a football fan, and so I get how it works, and I understand how it is. And it can be it's a really tough thing to come in and try and break and try and change. I think with an environment, it takes a lot of work to build and create a really good environment. And then unfortunately it's quite easy to ruin it, and you can do things quickly to ruin it. But to build a good one, it does take quite a lot of time.
Yeah. What do you think went wrong that season? Obviously, a lot of us had already gone wrong prior to you coming in. Prior to Simon Grayson even being appointed, people always say there was something wrong with the club for a long, long time. No one's ever really been able to put the finger on it. But was the mentality of the club just wrong, or was it simply a case of just the players not performing to the standard we required? Because if you go to the squad, obviously you had Lee Cattermore, John O'Shea. Off the top of my head, I can't think of too many others, but they were players who've been there for a long time. They were relegated from the Premier League, weren't performing in the Premier League, came down to the Championship, were relegated from the Championship. Ultimately, we ended up in League One. They stayed in the squad. And do you think that played a part to it as well? Obviously, having players that have been there through it all the bad times.
That plays a part in it. But certainly, I mean, the two boys you mentioned, Shazy and Lee Catmull, those were the two players who'd sort of carried a lot of the burden now. Yeah. And I know they both came in for bits of criticism from certain quarters as well. But all I can say in our relatively short time there, those two you mentioned never once shied away from anything, and they were always. I think that's probably why they did get a little bit stick, maybe, because they were the two, especially, who never backed down, never shied away, would always take things on the chin and stand up to be counted. Now, if there were more characters like them about, we would have stayed up. But unfortunately, those two were. There weren't too many others who were of that, sort of bravery, if you like, to do it. But like I say, certainly lots of things. I mean, you can go back years and years at the club and look at things that were done wrong, and you're like, oh, hang on, he signed for 6-7 million and never played for the club. Things that you like. Suddenly you start doing 3, 4, 5, 6 of them sort of players, and it's burning a massive hole, and you've got nothing to show for it. So there were lots of, recruitment's obviously one of the biggest things at a football club, and on that recruitment side, over a long period of time, I think it was questionable, to say the least.
Yeah. Jack Rodwell was, of course, employed by the club at that time, and I would say played for us at that time, but that wouldn't entirely be true. What was the situation with Jack like behind the scenes?
it was really, really frustrating. So talk about that. When I first came up, I came up for the Millwall game on the Saturday. Obviously, we picked up a couple of really bad injuries just within that one game. I think someone else picked up a booking and was suspended going into the Villa game. So Chris came up on a Sunday morning for training, then signed the contracts, and we went out to take the training. Jack trained, and I'm saying to Chris, we're on the side. I'm like, and he looked. He's 6'2", really good physical shape, and that he looked like a thoroughbred racehorse. I'm saying to Cookie on the side of the pitch, mate, he's starting on Tuesday night. No doubt about it. And it's a very easy training session. It's Sunday morning training session for the players that weren't in the starting 11 the day before. So it's fairly short and sharp. Nothing overly intense. We're looking at him. He's going to play for us on Tuesday night, and then about 10 minutes to go of the session, he starts rubbing his hamstring and just walks in, and we didn't see him again for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, whatever. So it was just really frustrating. Now, there's obviously a lot going on with Jack personally, and then everyone's got their own problems and issues and stuff. I understand that, but from our point of view, we're looking at him. He'd been a really good player. He was still in really good physical condition, and we needed him, but we never had him. That was as simple as that. For, again, whatever reason, he was never available. So he was on paper, again, one of these good players on paper, but was never of any use to the football club in our time there, or even afterwards, for that matter.
Yeah.
So it was really frustrating and annoying, and there were a few sort of situations or instances like that, and it didn't make our job any easier, put it that way, to come in, because we had, like I say, he's a big squad on paper, but loads are out on loan, loads picked up injuries, and so quite often what we're actually picking from, we had quite a few of the young players coming through we had to utilise, and then loan signings, and if you rely on them too much, I don't think longer term that's a good thing for the club.
Yeah. One of the players that I do remember being at the club at the time, I don't think he played too much during the season, but was obviously Josh Mcgee. Obviously, he's moved on now. He went to Bordeaux. He's now at Fulham. He's scoring goals in the Premier League from a team that are struggling to score goals, really. What was he like to work with? Because obviously we spoke to Luke last week, and from the first training session he had with Josh, he knew he'd be a Premier League footballer. As a fan watching the games, finishing was up there with, realistically, some of the best natural finishing we've seen at the club in a long time. He could spin, he could put a bottom corner, he could do whatever he wanted with the ball, really. What was he like to work with?
Yeah, Josh was, again, just reiterating sort of what you said, you could tell he was a talent. He's obviously a young player for us then, and straight away we said, listen, he's one we're going to use, and obviously he scored his first goal for us when we beat Fulham at home just before, a couple of weeks before Christmas or whatever, and broke that long run without a home win. So Madge was the boy who scored the goal in that, and he was at Fulham Academy as a kid as well, so that was sort of special for him. But we knew, you could tell he was a good player, and like I say, sort of unfortunately for us, he was very young when we came in and was just sort of finding his feet. But we used him obviously quite a lot, and was a player we really liked, and were straight away we pinpointed we want to get him signed on a longer term contract, because he's one for the future and a real talent, and which he's sort of showing now. He's not particularly quick at running the channels. And that's not his game. If you want a striker for over the top and something, that's not really his game. But as a finisher in the box, he's excellent, and he's a clever footballer as well. He's bright, and he can join in build up play very, very well and drop a bit deeper and things like that. He's a good player, Josh. Yeah, so pleased to see him doing well, and obviously pleased to see him doing well for one of my old clubs in Fulham as well.
Obviously, you've been watching the Premier League a bit this season. Do you think Fulham will stay up this season at the expense of a certain other team?
I think Fulham will. Yeah, I think they're. Also listen, they have got like a big budget and stuff. Fulham, they've got a lot of loan signings, but their actual budget is good for the Premier League sort of thing. So I think they've got the quality there, and the momentum's with Fulham, I think, now as well. So I fully expect them to stay up now.
Yeah, hopefully. Could be a tiny derby in the Championship. That would be an interesting one, wouldn't it?
It certainly would be. Yeah.
We've got to do our job first as well. But the whole season, of course, at Sunderland was well documented, probably because of the Netflix documentary. A lot of clubs do it now and it generates a lot of revenue, a lot of international interest, I suppose. But at the time, it wasn't really a known thing. There wasn't too many clubs doing it. Obviously, it's going back 3 years or so now, so I'm not entirely sure which clubs had done it, but I think Leeds had done one and possibly Manchester City. I'm not sure if that one came after the one we did, but how does that affect the way you would approach different situations?
Yeah, not massively, to be fair. I mean, it's something that, if given choice, we wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But literally, we'd agreed the contracts and we're just about to put pen to paper. And I think Martin Bain was very clever and he knew what he was doing. He said, "Oh, by the way, one more thing I need to tell you," and he dropped in about the Netflix thing, which obviously was the owner's choice to do it. And so, like I say, we sort of looked at each other and rolled our eyes a little bit, but signed the contracts and got on with it. And it wasn't. I mean, the guys doing it, because obviously the production company are the guys who head up are Sunderland fans, which helped, I think, a little bit. So they were and the guys doing it, like the main guy who was on the shop floor, so to speak, with us every day. A guy called Suits. He was fantastic and has a real good personality and character. So he had to try and push for things because that was his job to get the documentary. But he was also understanding and respectful of the pressures that were going around the football club and that would be at a football club generally, but especially a football club in our position. So it wasn't as intrusive or as big a pain in the arse as it could have been, because the guys doing it and the cameraman we got to know personally, and they were really good guys. So that certainly helped, I think.
Yeah. Did it have any impact on the players at all? Obviously, I know one of the things that the cameras did pick up that, if a Netflix documentary wasn't there, would have probably changed a lot of the situation. But again, talk about Jack Rodwell was the bit where he sat in the injury room, and I think he turns around to one of the players and says, "Look, I'm not playing on Saturday." How does that affect the morale of the squad and the togetherness of them?
Yeah, well, obviously, listen, things like that don't help at all. You want, especially in times of adversity, you want everyone pulling together. And I mean, it's easy when things are going well for everyone to be upbeat and all want to play and stuff like that. But yes, when it's going a bit tough, like I say, that's when you see the real character, and that's when, like I say, you mentioned earlier about Katz and Shazy.
Yeah.
And listen, they didn't always have brilliant games for the club, but they always put themselves forward and character-wise. And listen, they're both really good players as well.
Yeah.
But character-wise, they certainly stood up and were counted. And I know me and Chris certainly thanked them both for that, because it wasn't easy for them either, and they really sort of stuck their necks out.
Yeah. Overall, obviously, it was a poor season. It was a poor time for the club, but with all the hits and the blows that we did take that season, there were still some positives, some good games. And there's one game that stands out to me in particular, and it would have to be the Bristol City game. I'm sure you'll remember that one. But from your time at the club, was there any game in particular that you look back on as the one that you enjoyed?
Well, it's funny with football because you don't enjoy the games really as an assistant or a manager. You don't enjoy them. Like when the final whistle goes and you've won, it's just a big, massive sigh of relief rather than enjoyment. And it's funny, and that's how it is. But the games that stick out, like I said, the Bristol City one, to come back and get a point when we were, flipping out of sight at half time.
Yeah.
And could have won it. I remember Fletch hit the bar from about 4 yards or something. So, for a game we getting battered, we could have gone on and won it, which would have been the biggest and most bizarre thing of all time.
Istanbul, wasn't it? It was called.
Yeah. The Fulham at home, where we beat a really good Fulham team who were pushing for promotion. We beat them 1-0 at the Stadium of Light and finished that long on non-winning run at the stadium. That was a massive game. And I remember then Derby away, under the floodlights in the pouring rain. And we played really, really well. And you're like, there were signs, and you're thinking, this is the one, we've turned the corner here now. And that made it even more frustrating, because there were signs that we could do it. We could play really well, but getting that consistency was something that we couldn't quite find, and ultimately cost us.
Yeah. Well, April 2018, obviously your time at the club did come to an end, and it was due to a change of ownership. Stuart Donald took over as chairman. How did that situation pan out?
Yeah, well, we knew, obviously, we knew we were going down. So we'd already started planning long before. We had sort of two different lists of players going. We're planning for the following season. So we had two lists of players. One list, if we managed to stay up, which obviously we're all fully focused on, a list of players for the Championship, and then another list of players if we were to go down for League One. And obviously they're two very different lists. So we were planning and starting to put things in place for the following season. I'd already been away and sorted out the pre-season camp for the club. I went away with Brett, who was the club secretary at the time, and we'd got all that sorted out. So we were very much, like I say, planning for the following year. But then, like you say, change of ownership. We just literally, I got a phone call from Chris to say he'd had a phone call to say that was it. We were done, sort of thing. We were out. So that was it. So it's very disappointing. But, it's football. I understand it. I know how the game works. I've been in it long enough. And we had to sort of just dust ourselves down and then start thinking about the next challenge.
Yeah. Obviously, it was Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven that took over. In hindsight, we know they aren't footballing people and certainly shouldn't be in charge of a club in the English leagues. But was there anything particularly worrying about their manner and their attitude during the short time they were in contact?
No, we had no contact with them at all. So literally, just as the takeover was happening, I don't know if you remember, but the two announcements, I think then the club announced takeover, and then 15 minutes later announced being sacked, sort of thing. So we had no contact with the new ownership whatsoever. So we had nothing to do with that at all. So it's again, it'd be difficult then for me to comment on something I don't know about directly. But I'm sure you've got your own opinions on it.
Yeah, I'm sure we do. Obviously, we've been in League One ever since that season. We got so close to going up in the first season. I think we were third in the table, joint points with second, 3 games in hand, and ultimately didn't go up. But things are looking better this season. Getting the results, getting the games. We've got Lee Johnson, who I'm sure you know as well. Great coach, great manager. Do you ever get the chance to watch the games or check on the results?
Certainly check on the results. All my old clubs, I've got. I can't. I'm the type of person, when I work somewhere, and I work at a football club, you can't help but get like a feeling and an affection for that club. So certainly League One for me now, it's I've got quite a lot of interest in it. With Sunderland and with Portsmouth. So I look at both clubs' results, and the ideal one for me is that they both go up. I mean, they're both obviously big clubs and should be playing at a much higher level. Premier League, if not Championship, then Premier League even maybe. So so I follow the games closely, see how it's doing, and obviously really pleased to see the way the Sunderland results have picked up and how well it's going.
Yeah. Obviously, Aidan Mcgee, as I mentioned before, he wasn't playing under Phil Parkinson. He was kind of frozen out. He went on loan to Charlton, didn't perform. But Lee Johnson came in, brought him back into the team. I think he's the top of the assist charts for League One, having played 3 months less than everybody else. And obviously, he was there during the Championship season as well. You'll have seen it in the news, you'll have seen it in the papers about Parkinson saying he was a bad influence on the squad. He would bully the younger players. But then Lee Johnson came in. As soon as Mcgee come back in, things improved. We started getting results, and obviously he's getting the numbers as well. What was he like in the dressing room? Was there any ever sign of what Phil Parkins had claimed that to be? Obviously, this is 2 years apart, but was there any ever sign of Mcgee being a bad character?
It was like when we were there, certainly, it was a difficult changing room, is what I'd say. And it wasn't, things weren't quite right within the changing room. Like I say, within the balance of that squad and within the changing room, it wasn't what we would have liked it to be, and what I think how it needs to be for the team and the club to be successful. So things weren't quite right. I say I'm not going to go. I wouldn't sort of point out an individual and say it was their fault the changing room wasn't right, but the whole thing and the dynamic wasn't quite right at that time within the changing room. So Phil Parkinson, I know very, very well. Well, not very, very, but well enough over a long number of years.
Yeah.
Parky's a straight up guy. Do you know what I mean? So he will say things as he found them, you know. So, and he wouldn't just make something up. So there'd be, listen, it's like anything. There'd be twos and foes. So if you speak to Parky, he'd give his side of it. If you speak to Geeds, he'd give his side of it. It's like anything, you know. There's generally that it's probably meet in the middle somewhere. If you want to get the real truth of the matter or something. So and like, I've been in and around it long enough. But yeah, like all I can say is the whole dynamic of the changing room wasn't as positive and as good as you would want it to be. And like I say, the two of the best characters who did stand out were Cats and John O'Shea, you know. And like I say, it's funny sometimes because those two got a lot of stick from people, but it's funny sometimes. I know, certainly, you know, got to take people as you find them. For me, those were the two that really like stood up and really, really cared about the club, you know, and were passionate about the club.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the final part of the episode, which I mentioned to you before. A short quiz about your time at the club, your career, and just some general knowledge questions. We had Luke Molyneux on last week, and he got 1 point, albeit 2 half points, because I was feeling generous. It was the first quiz that we'd done since we did rename the podcast, so 2 half points is what you need to beat. So if you get 2 out of 6, you're currently top of the table. You up for it?
Let's give it a go. Go on.
First 3 questions are about Sunderland. Obviously, your 4th question is about your playing career, and then 2 general knowledge as well.
Okay.
So the first one is, our first win under yourself and Chris came against Burton, who scored for Sunderland.
Grabs, I'd say. Was it? Who was it? Oh my God. I can remember Chris celebrating at the end with the fans in the pouring rain, like a drowned rat. Scored the goals, bloody hell. Gucci had something to do with one. I'm trying to picture it now. Did Gucci score? Oh, God. Was it the same person who scored both goals? You're going to tell? Come on. Give me a break.
2 different people.
Gooch and Graban.
Is that what you're going with?
Oh. I'm going to kick myself. Yeah, go on. I'll go with that.
Ashley Fletcher.
Was it?
George Honeyman.
Oh, okay.
And I think if I remember the Honeyman goal correctly, I think Joel Azoro was on the right. I think he's cut inside and he played a little ball in the middle and Honeyman just tapped it into an empty net. I think that was the game.
That's not going to be Josh, is it? Flipping out.
I was going to be generous there and give you half a point for each one you got right as well, but there you go. Okay. First one down. Question 2. Who was our main shirt sponsor for that season?
Dafferbat.
Is that your final answer?
No, you're getting me questioning yourself again now. Or was Dafferbat the year before? There was definitely some gear going around. It might have been hooky gear from the year before with Dafferbat on. That's all I think of, Dafferbat.
Yeah.
Oh,
it is Dafferbat. That's your first one right. That's 1 point. You're now level with Luke.
Excellent.
You've got 5 questions left. There's probably 4 questions left to go. Your third question, again, is about Sunderland. After you and Chris took over at Sunderland, who was the first signing that we made?
Who would that be? So it was, could only get loans in that January. So Fletch came in, Campy. Who else? I'll go Fletcher. No.
Wrong.
Go on then, who's it?
It was someone who came on loan from Chelsea.
Oh, Jake. Yeah, Jake.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, flipping out.
Yeah.
I did the deal as well. Oh, brilliant.
Even worse.
Yeah, Jake, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, Jake Clark-Salter. And question 4, which is the last one about you and your career, and this is about as a player. David further back.
Oh, flipping out. Bear in mind, that was a long time ago. Come on.
It was 1992, this question.
Oh, right, okay.
After as a player, you made your first Wales appearance in 1992.
Yeah.
Who was the opponent?
Oh, yeah, okay. Republic of Ireland. Away from home, 1-1-0. Mark Pembridge scored the goal. And we played at the RDS, which is the Royal Dublin Showground, because Lansdowne Road was being turned into the Aviva, basically, I think, or whatever. So I had to play there. And I can remember the pitch was like that because it was a showground, horse jumping. And I had to have a tetanus jab before the game. I remember getting a letter through because of the horse shit on the pitch. That's crazy. But yeah, there you go. So
Very good. You certainly know that one, but you're only getting 1 point for it still.
Oh, come on. Bonus point all day long.
You're still top of the table, though.
All right, that's right then.
It's top of the table on 2 points from 4 questions, so not doing badly. But question 5 is the first of 2 general knowledge. And I always like a general knowledge question. They are interesting ones. But what is the most flexible muscle in the human body?
Flexible tongue.
Yep.
Is it?
That is the right answer.
It's in.
Not many people get that. We use that on our last... We do a couple of quizzes on here as well. We use that question. No one got it. There's 6 people doing that, so it's a good answer. That is tongue. That's 3 out of 6 so far. 3 out of 5 so far, and you've got a 6th question now, which is another interesting one.
Okay.
What's the national animal of Scotland?
National animal. Bloody hell. Thinking of like Highland cows or something like that. What else could it be? Yeah, I'll have to go with that, I think. That was native to Scotland. Yeah, Highland cows.
Do you want a clue? You'll not get a point for it now, but do you want a clue?
Go on then.
Doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist. Or is that flying haggis or something? Is it? Or something stupid like that?
The unicorn.
That's
national animal of Scotland.
That's not. If it doesn't exist, that's not even a proper question. Come on.
If you Google the national animal of Scotland, it's a unicorn.
Really? Okay.
It is.
All right.
So it's an interesting one. But you got 3 out of 6, so you are top. Obviously, Luke got 1, got 2 half points. You are top at the moment out of 2 people that have done it so far.
Excellent. What do I get if I win come the end of the season?
Ooh.
It's got to be a star prize.
We'll have to think about that, won't we?
All right. Okay. I'll leave that one with you. Brilliant. Cheers. Good man.
We're going to have to think about that now.
Yeah, there you go.
It's going to be an interesting one to think about. But that is all we have time for today. I appreciate you coming on, Kit, and hope you keep well.
No, pleasure, mate. Yeah, and obviously, listen, just best of luck to all the supporters and everyone associated with the club, mate.
Yeah. We will be back on Monday, hopefully, to discuss the cup final that we have on Sunday in the Papa John's Trophy. What do you think of that name, Kit? Is that a prestigious trophy for you?
Prestigious, definitely. Listen, when I played for Fulham in the Premier League, we were sponsored by Pizza Hut, so I'm all over it.
It's an interesting one. What do you prefer, Papa John's or Pizza Hut?
I don't eat either of them. I've got a little local Italian restaurant, and they do amazing takeaway pizzas. So I'll stick with them.
That's fine. Very nice. But like I say, we will be back on Monday. We'll also have a preview out for the Accrington game on Wednesday. But until then, we will see you later.
That's all, folks.